Hello, Joe. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yourself?
Well, very good. Very considering the strange world we're now in. What
It's
part
a
of the UK
difficult.
are you in Cardiff?
Yeah, I'm in Cardiff. Yeah, so it's not too bad here. It's just been okay.
Has it been all
It's been
right
all
then?
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're able to kind of do the same sort of stuff. Really, I mean, we haven't been able to like get together and do anything, but we've been writing and stuff. So, which is kind of the thing we were doing before lockdown, anyway. So, which has been quite nice.
So you're just sending what you're sending files to each other.
Yeah, just keep sending. Like all of us have got like our own sort of home studio setup, so everyone keeps just sending each other bits, really, which is quite nice. And then our producer Steph, we kind of just keep sending him stuff. So there's kind of like
You've got
everyone's sort of
yeah.
yeah, everyone's got more together now as well, which is quite nice. But then there's obviously aspects of it we're not not enjoying so much.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, not be able to, I mean it's all right writing with files, but you still need the energy of being
That's the
together in
thing.
a room to make it work, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. So we've just been demoing really, and then hopefully we'll be able to in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully
Yeah.
Wales, because Wales is further behind England, which is like quite a yeah, it's just slightly behind. So everything is being like the lockdown's been relaxed a little bit slower than in England as well. So we're just a few weeks behind, I think,
Was that
which is
behind
probably not a bad thing to be honest.
Marta? I think it's a rush here, a desperate rush. Yeah.
Definitely.
One thing that Wales is definitely not behind in is guitar bands. It's got an
Yeah.
amazing history of guitar bands. I mean, I know you can go way back to the 60s, but in terms of what you're doing, we can go back to the Manics and that moment when the Manics
Yeah.
broke through. They changed everything in Wales. And to this day, and your band is probably the latest installment of this story, these fantastic melodic, pretty intense guitar bands coming out of Wales. So do you feel very much part of that history?
Yeah, I mean, I'm flattered by that because I think all of us as a band are like really um, proud to be from Wales. I think it's just such a huge like badge of honor for us, and I think with the music here, it's just always been so. There's something about it. I think everyone always says jokes about there's something in the water here, but I think at times there definitely is, and I think the Manics are definitely one of those bands that we've kind of built our sound around or built like an idea around because they're just such a huge band and like I think they're not afraid to pull any punches kind of thing. Yeah, they're just happy to make great music and say how they feel or like the way they see things and maybe not not just have to write about like things that are will make them in the charts or so I think yeah there's quite a few bands here as well that are kind of doing the same or kind of done the same over the years, which is a
What,
pleasure to be a part of it, I think.
what is it that makes a band Welsh? I know it's I mean, there's all cliches in there, but there are certain things that seem to run through all the bands. Like Stereophonics as well. They can
Yeah,
melodic, great singing. It's quite traditional, but also it never sounds old fashioned. And I can never quite put my finger on it. But there's something
yeah,
about Welsh bands that sounds quite different from English bands.
yeah. I really, it's hard to explain. I think it's yeah, without sounding really cliche, I think there's that whole thing of it's just something in the way the music feels. I think there's often just the kind of, and it's also I believe that you kind of get influenced by the music that builds around you and kind of take little bits of things from your history or where you're from. And I think it's shown in music like in Sheffield, with Art Monkeys and bands like that coming through, and you see indie bands or like rock bands coming through in those areas. I think it's the same here in Wales. I think, but I just think there's something different here. I don't know. I can't even put my finger on it being from here, but I don't know. It's just a pleasure to really have been able to be brought up on that kind of music.
Do you think people are less worried about being fashionable? Like some British cities, guitar
Yeah.
bands would be, well, probably more in the media than by normal people, but they're looked down upon. But in most places like Wales or cities a long way out from London, it's still a huge culture, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think we kind of like have this whole thing that I think everyone's kind of behind Welsh bands. It's the thing I was watching there's a 4 years to the day where Wales beat Belgium in the Euros in the
Mm.
football. And there's just something different. I think everyone seems to be really supportive of their own nation here. I think everyone's when it comes to football, everyone's exactly the same. But in music as well, I think it's very much the same. Where people just get behind it. I think the shows in when we play in in Wales, there's a different sort of feeling to the shows that there are anywhere else, really. And I mean that in like a great way to both sides, whether it's a Welsh show or not, because I think we get that quite a lot in the UK, which has been insane. Some of the response that we've had, even as a really small band, the response of people and, you know, the commitment to our music. But I think it's just, there's something nice about coming home, especially at the last date of a tour or the last show of a tour, and you come home after traveling for ages, and you get to come home and there's like this, there's this buzz around the show, definitely.
It's quite amazing, because I remember in the early days of Mannix, when I was writing about them, people had no idea, such disdain for Welsh bands. The idea a band could come out of Wales, they were looked upon as being some kind of like annoying peasants. How did their band come from Blackwood? You know, it was looked on like that. And of course, it's completely different now, because you have that tradition to play off. Yeah. It's a normal process, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think we're kind of grateful to everyone who's kind of done things prior to us here, because there's a lot of Welsh bands that probably, you know, just missed out on just making that break, that have also contributed to, you know, like the Manics becoming huge and Stereophonics and all these kind of bands. There was this whole scene around Wales, and there is one I feel coming now, because I think it comes in kind of peaks and troughs where something will really build and then something will, you know, quieten down for tiny areas of time. But I think there's something now coming with Welsh music again, because I think there's a lot of bands now willing to make the effort and kind of speak up as loud as possible, and people seem to be listening, which is great.
Do you find it frustrating that guitar music, people always go on about guitar music's dead, indie music's dead, when all the bands are playing stadiums, aren't they? I mean, it's a bit distinct between what's going on and what people actually report as what the culture is.
That's the thing. I think it's like, I'm in a way, I'm kind of disappointed because people can go out and find it, but also in a selfish kind of way, I'm a little bit happy as a fan as well of guitar music. I'm kind of happy because, you know, all the little things that people don't bother to, you know, take the effort and kind of out of a tiny bit of ignorance, don't really go out and spend time looking for the things that is going to be as big, and they, you know, tend to just buy into a headline or buy into a bit of media or what the media say. I think, you know, there's loads of guitar music coming through, and I think I was listening to Radio 1, I think it was Jack Saunders or something like that. He said that there's like going to be this massive band coming soon, and it's kind of, it seems to build to that every time. I think guitar music will never really fade away, because I think there's something so specific and so like unique about the way of a guitar band, the energy you get from that show. It's different. It's just something different about it.
There is definitely a vacancy since the Arctic Monkeys for the generational defining guitar bands. Yes, there's been big bands. Stereophonics consistently big bands, but the band that seems to just the culture that you go to music college and all the boys turn up and they all got a guitar and they could all play 20 Arctic Monkeys songs. You know, it hasn't been that band since then.
That's the thing. I think Royal Blood were tipped to be something really, really huge, and I think they've done pretty well, to be honest, considering. But I think there's just that little nudge on then from the difference between Royal Blood and then Arctic Monkeys or something like that. And I think, you know, everyone wants to be that band. So everyone who's in the industry thinks they're going to be that band, and I think you have to. I think like we believe we're going to be that band. You know, that you've got to. I think in a sense, I think it's like probably a curse of a musician that you think that's going to be, you're going to be the one, or you're going to be the next big thing. And I think that, you know, you've got to have faith in yourself and believe in what you're doing. Because
if you can back it up, it becomes self-fulfilling prophecy, don't it? Like with Oasis or the Rosies, they definitely believe they'd be the biggest bands in the world, and because they could back it up, it happened, didn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think, you know, I think a lot of the time with like rock bands, there's a lot of things like people make massive claims, and I mean this in the way that we can make the same claims. But I think unless you truly believe you're going to go and back it up, you know, it's just a statement. You know, like this an empty statement, really. But I think, you know, every band will believe they can go on and be that band. But I think we've always believed that we were going to do something really big with music, and I think when we released Thank God I Met You, and it just sort of took off with like radio and streams, we were like, I think that was the second release we had ever released, so we were kind of like, we're ready for this. And I think ever since then we've been kind of building slowly towards that thing. And I think this next few months is going to be, on even next year, is going to be huge for us as a band, I think.
Yeah, the streaming thing's remarkable, and it is about 2 million streams. Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. I think we've had 2 tracks go over a million plays now, which is insane. And I think it was like one song, Thank God That You, is like 20 plus million streams now, which is insane. Yeah, it's mad.
That's insane.
Yeah, which is nuts.
Would you say in some ways you're the first post-streaming guitar band? You know the way Arctic Monkeys kind of made it for MySpace. I know it's a bit made up that, but and streaming seemed to favour pop acts for a long time. But now maybe the people like guitar music hooking on a new band and they're moving those files around and telling their mates, and you become the band that's kind of surfing on a streaming phenomenon.
Yeah, I think there have been people slightly before us, I think, that just nicked it in terms of like how much, but I think like of time. But I think, and certainly in terms of numbers, I think we've very much been grateful to have the kind of streaming support of like things like Spotify and stuff. I think it's we never really just really were like, let's go and be a streaming band or like anything. But I think it's just, I think you've got to move with the way that the format or the landscape of music is in the industry. I think that's something that I think a lot of bands, especially rock music, is like kind of, you get held back by the kind of thing that you want to stick to the way that you've always dreamed it, or the way you've always said like, oh, we're going to release a CD, or like, because everyone who's been growing up and listening to rock bands, the big bands like Nirvana, like these massive bands all released albums on CDs and vinyls, and growing up with record store day and things like this, it's like you kind of have to develop with the landscape. And I feel like even for us now, the closer we get to doing bigger stages or bigger shows or releasing more music, I think the more ambition we gain. I think that's the thing with a lot of stuff is, I think in a weird way, rock and roll is kind of quite a humble thing, and bands are quite, because you look at all these like pop acts who are going, yeah, I want this like massive stage with these huge shows and rigs and stuff. And I think that's the thing. I think kind of it'd be nice to have a band to come back and have a bit of belief in their own music and say, look, this is the way we're going to do it, and we're going to shed loads of money into it, and we're going to kind of make this something really special.
What is it about the guitar that does actually survive? Well, people are all getting the knocking it gets, but for people in Welsh Valleys, estates on the edge of Manchester, up in Glasgow, whatever, it's still the primary way of making music for decades and decades. Why is that?
I just think there's something about the sound. I think it's just the sheer energy you can get from just the fact that it's quite diverse as well. Like, I think me and the boys, we often listen to so much, like, a varied amount of music when we're doing tours and stuff, and we kind of just sit there and pick as many albums as we possibly can to listen. And I think just the diverse like nature of how it is, even for just one band, if like we're talking about Arctic Monkeys and you're looking from AM even, or Tranquility Base, the difference from that to the first album. But I think there's just so much power in something that's so simplistic in terms of a guitar and a vocal with drums and bass. I think there's just this huge sound to it. And I feel like you can get this like stadium sound out of just like the simplest of things, like whether it's a kick and a snare and like a really nice bit of build and a bass. But I think it's just the guitar is like that thing that kind of elevates the whole sound of it. And I think between a rhythm guitar and a lead, there's that huge space of which you can do pretty much anything. And I think a lot of people who play guitar or pick up guitar, when we were learning instruments, like when I was young, like that was it was the idea of freedom that the guitar gave, because you were kind of just like, oh, well, I'm not going to go and do what everyone else is doing and whatever it was. It was kind of sitting and get really frustrated with this instrument and then learn to love it. And I think that's the thing. There's just this huge parameter of what you can create with it. And I think even with pedals and stuff like that now, like that's a really big thing. But even without that, I think just the sheer noise you can get out of a guitar, and just seeing massive like guitar heroes like Jack White and stuff, who are kind of can just get these incredible sounds out of just this one instrument. I think it's just something about it.
What was the band that turned you onto this in the first place? Would it be the Arctic Monkeys? The band that your band, your generation, and opened up all the doors, and you saw music in a completely different way.
Yeah, maybe. I think for me personally, it was the Strokes. It wasn't like they were already around by the time I was like kind of listening to music, because I'd have had a really ropey music taste before then with
No
growing up
guilt
in
to blame.
school. Yeah, but that's the thing. I think it kind of just Arctic Monkeys would have been up there. I think. Right. I remember myself and Mike, the guitarist, we really liked the Libertines because we were just when that was kind of one of the bands we were kind of just really into, just because there was no airs and graces about the band. It was kind of just these like four guys willing to literally die for the love of their band or the love of their music. And I think it's just sheer belief in yourself. And I think that was what they were one of the bands. And I think it's the Strokes. I think there's just something about Julian Casablancas' voice that was kind of just drew me in. But I think those are the bands, and Arctic Monkeys definitely. I think I probably was maybe a tiny bit late to the party on that. I think I probably didn't maybe get into it until like Favorite Worst Nightmare, that sort of thing. I think it took me just a slightly longer than others around me anyway to kind of realize how good they were, which is a shame because I missed out on the hype of the first album a little.
Well, as long as you get there in the end.
Exactly, that's true.
He's amazingly talented in me, Alex Turner.
Yeah, he's great. I think he's just as a songwriter as well. I think that's the thing with like rock and roll music. I think as well is that sometimes people don't get given the credit as songwriters because it's all about the band. And I think a lot of the time, like there are great songwriters out there as well. Like Alex Turner is one of them. I think that if you put those songs to like a pop act, you'd be saying, or like someone wrote it for them, you'd be saying how great the songwriter is.
Mm. And talk of songwriting, it's not just the melodies. Your melodies can fill a stadium, but lyrically as well, that's going to be important. So, I mean, are there certain things you write about, or is it just whatever's in your head that day?
I think me and Mike rewrite most of the songs, and I think it's generally quite deliberate the way we try and write as much as possible. I think when we release an album or something comes out, I think the whole picture will kind of make a bit more sense, and hopefully as we release more and more, it will. But I think generally we try and take things as they come. So if something changes or something happens, we'll try and write about that as much as physically possible. But I know Mike tends to write quite politically and kind of enjoys being able to have a voice, because we appreciate the fact that we're in this position now and where certain people will respect our opinion or listen to our opinion. And I think for us, realistically, as well as making this music that we love doing, I think there's a certain aspect of we have to speak up about certain things, and we have to allow ourselves to say our opinions based on stuff, and whether that is something people agree with. I think we're not too bothered whether people are too happy to say, oh, that's not the right thing to say, because we just believe in what we write about. And I think this is the new single now, We Love to Hate, I think is kind of that aspect of things. There's kind of, we weren't really afraid to say that, not everyone's great, but I think we need to be a bit better with ourselves and, to judge ourselves as well as everyone else. I think a lot of the music is like, from my side of things, is kind of self-criticism as well. I think a lot of that is in the music, and we're not perfect. We're happy to say that, but we're happy to write about it as well.
And this period is a strange period, isn't it? You're the first generation of young rock and roll bands not to deal with a pandemic. I mean, how does that affect you artistically and also practically as well? Because you can't do very much now, can you?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's a tough one. I think we've been trying to make the best of it, I think, really. But I do think that hopefully when things get back to normal, it'll mean that we're raring to go. I think that's the thing that we've kind of taken from this. We've kind of just been writing this series of songs because I think that after this comes to an end, all this lockdown stuff and coronavirus, and I think there's always going to be something is there to potentially hold you back or get in the way, another hurdle you kind of have to get over the top of, or struggle to get over the top of, but I think I think this one's been difficult with the coronavirus, because I was in hospital in December, and I was in a coma for 3 days, which was insane because it was kind of just came just before.
Wow.
And then I have diabetes, so it was kind of, I think in a weird way, I kind of burnt myself out, I think. But it was kind of like unfortunate that that was the timing, but it's kind of given us a new energy to kind of come back and be like, get things really in place, ready for when everything's ready again. Because we're itching to play a live show, but we want to do what's best for our fans and best for us and safest for us. I think that's the main thing for all of us as well. But I think it's great for us in terms of streaming wise as well, and just sheer listening to music. I know my dad's been listening to music like the whole lockdown, and like music he wouldn't necessarily listen to, which is, I think that's the great thing. We've kind of been able to listen to stuff that we haven't listened to in years, or new stuff, and kind of pick and draw inspiration from all of that, which is a real bonus.
Is there a sense that this period is, for your generation, the defining moment of that generation? And as a musician, do you feel like a duty to document it, or ignore it, or define it, or embrace it?
Yeah, I think it depends really. I think it's something we'll never forget. But I don't know. I think for us as a band, we may find ourselves documenting it a slight amount, just in the way that, not even just music wise, but I mean, because like social media and things like this have become such a huge part of life, and things like doing interviews online and stuff, they never go away. So we're never going to forget this. I think everyone who's kind of here now is never ever going to forget, the way that this life is. But I think in terms of defining this period of time, we may define it, but I think realistically, once everything gets back out and is back to normal, I think hopefully will be defined by something better and something people will remember as in a more positive light.
Brilliant. That's all I need. So, yeah. Thanks for that, Joe.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Yeah. Thank you very much. Cheers for that.